Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Podcast Daily. It is Thursday. It is now 2 days away from Ohio State and Georgia in the Peach Bowl in the college football playoff. I am here, 48 floors up in the Atlanta skyline, and Bill
Wow.
Landis. Yeah, I'm going deep with the details, all the color that you could possibly need from my HQ here. And Bill is in the familiar confines of the home office in Columbus, and still no baby.
No,
What's
no,
going
no
on?
baby, no
Come on.
baby yet. I am currently one floor off the ground here in Columbus, and still babyless.
Okay, well that's good to know. In the comments, I guess a lot of people somehow didn't know that was the situation because they thought that the best member of the squad was left off the travel roster, and clearly everyone likes Berm. So it was a nice little jab at me that I'm here and you're not. I'll just do the best that I can, but like it's fair. I'm definitely third on the pecking order, but
Oh, that's not true. That's not true.
anyway, we'll do the best we can no matter what. I think you've been paying close attention from afar, as of course you always would. I know that it's not the easiest way to do it, but you've been monitoring all the press conferences the last 2 days. Certainly you were on the Zoom on Monday, and a lot of the questions, it's a long-winded way of saying I think it's been weird the way people are talking about and asking questions to Ohio State this week, like there's some sort of talentless poverty program.
They're certainly not that. It is a little strange, I suppose. Like on one hand, like I get it, they are not the favorite in this game. They lost the last time we saw them on the field. Although I get like I have not been paying attention to like what's going on with the Fiesta Bowl media. Like TCU lost its last game. Is TCU being treated like they're some kind of second class citizen that doesn't belong in the playoff? I don't know. I think maybe that is part of it. Like some people don't think Ohio State deserves to be here. My response to that would be like, well, who else are you going to put in? Like there were teams that had the opportunity to be here and they lost as well. So like no one really went out and grabbed it. Ohio State, by virtue of what it had done before losing to Michigan, I probably earned it more so than those other teams did. So I don't really understand that either. It's not like I think Georgia's better than Ohio State. I think Georgia should be favored, but I don't look at the two programs. I think it's like David versus Goliath, and Ohio State has no business like believing it should be on the field with the Bulldogs. Like there are three preeminent programs in the sport when it comes to like talent acquisition and success, and two of them were on the field in the Peach Bowl. So like I don't know, let's pretend like they both belong there.
Yeah, I didn't want us to do another day of the daily where we were asking what questions we wanted to ask. So today I'm just trying to figure out why other people have chosen these questions, because it's driving me crazy. I don't understand what's happening. Like the spread is 6.5 in this game. Ohio State and Georgia spent the entire year, certainly when the selection committee got involved, being number 1 and number 2 in the polls. This was a game that everyone thought was most likely going to happen in the national championship. As you said, talent acquisition and star rankings and recruiting success, all of that points to a reason why Ohio State and Georgia are both on the stage. It was also asked, Bill, on Wednesday, and I don't remember if it was in the print breakout session where I was or in the on-camera part, but it was like, do you feel like Georgia has an advantage from having been on the stage before? And I was like, they've been in the playoff 3 of the last 4 years.
They were in the national championship.
They were in the national championship 2 years ago. It was like Tommy Eichenberg's like he's completely a new experience to him. No, they've all been here before. They talked about it on Selection Sunday. Hey, it's 3 of the last 4 years. We get to use the same blueprint that we used to go beat down Clemson in the Sugar Bowl 2 years ago. Like, I feel like people are losing their minds. And it's not like I get the part of our coverage of Ohio State and the element of the fan base that is upset about November 26th, and they thought that the signing class could be better. They're frustrated with name, image, likeness. The details of the things that are not perfect for Ohio State, obviously we understand them better than most. That's our day-to-day life. But I'm really fascinated by the stuff that's outside that's saying, well, Ohio State has to just play a close game with Georgia, or the narrative will change, or the perception of the program will be irreparably harmed. Like, what? It's a 6.5 point spread in the semifinal from the team that was, top 2. Some people thought they were number 1 ahead of Georgia during the regular season before November 26th. I don't know how it's been extrapolated to this extent where there's a national problem with Ohio State's brand. I don't understand it.
Yeah, that is that's probably taking it a step too far. I don't know that I consider I don't go into this game thinking to myself like this is a referendum on the program. I don't I guess it could become that depending on how this game transpires, but I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Like I come at this as like these are two equal programs. Like there's Ohio State is not coming to Atlanta for merely a like moral victory to salvage something. Like they're coming here or there, I guess I should say, with an ability to win the game. Like they're just as talented. So I don't understand why they would be treated like some like plucky upstart who found its way onto the stage when, as you said, they've been here 3 out of the last 4 years. Now, you gotta win when you get here. Like and Ryan Day is 1-1 in the playoff. Like whatever, it's fine. He's 500. He's won 1. He's lost 1, and they got their doors went off a little bit in the national championship. There were obviously some extenuating circumstances there. I think you want to have a good showing on a stage like this. If you get blown out, it's not great. Combined with a loss to Michigan, it's certainly not great. And there are hard questions to ask, but I don't think like the future success or failures of Ohio State as a program are necessarily riding on this game, because guess what? No matter what happens, the expectation is they're going to be right back in this game next year.
Yeah. It's, I just have a hard time wrapping my mind around it. Cause you said, well, is this happening in the Fiesta Bowl? And no, it's not. People are celebrating TCU's rise. They, were once floating around and conferenceless and going to the Mountain West, and then wherever, 1 year in the Big East, and then now they're in the Big 12, and they've built this program. Like they forget, well, it was a Big 12 championship game. That doesn't matter for them. They've got a chance to go shock the world. And like, I think they have a much, much, much worse chance of beating Michigan than Ohio State does of winning on Saturday night against Georgia, because I think the Buckeyes have a pretty decent shot at doing so if they play their best. The other part of this, I think, is Ohio State's getting pretty annoyed by that. The questions that they're getting. I think they're like, anybody can cover the sport and do their jobs however they want. I'm not here to tell them do it exactly this way and only ask the questions that I think you should. That's not what I'm suggesting. But they're happening at such a volume this week, and because I don't understand that perception of Ohio State being broken, you can just see the annoyance building. And I don't know if that will have any impact on Saturday night or not. We already know that before they even left Columbus, that C.J. Stroud was saying not even just Ohio against the world, but the Woody against the world. Mm-hmm. Like I think there's probably some element where the chip on Ohio State's shoulder is growing, but it's not because they don't feel like they are out of place or that they don't belong or that they don't think they can beat Georgia without extra motivation. Like they're not intimidated by Georgia. And we can go through every position if we want. I don't really think that there's a terrible mismatch. You'd certainly give Georgia, like I was asked this by, the Georgia rival site, where would be a part of concern for Ohio State? Like, I don't know that there is one that has Ohio State truly worried. I think they know they have to account for Jalen Carter and that there's been some question about, Matthew Jones with the health, and then Donovan Jackson struggling in the second half of the season. So that's what I chose as the one that's like the most important matchup. But if you're going anywhere else, like I have a hard time saying that basically it's even in me. Like I wouldn't say that if you went through and did those check marks like people used to do in the newspaper and laid it out in the agate section, like here's who's got the edge. Like I think it's pretty even across the board, other than maybe Jalen Carter against the guards. Like that's so. Why would Ohio State feel like it has to come in with a slingshot and a lot of motivation? They don't have to.
Yeah, I think there are strengths of Georgia's that are probably opposed to weaknesses of Ohio State, but the same is true on the other side of that. Like I don't know. Marvin Harrison versus Khalil Ringo, I'd probably take Marvin Harrison. And I think CJ Stroud at his best is like better than Stetson Bennett at his best. Like there's strengths on both sides. That's why like sometimes throughout the year, Ryan Day will talk about quote unquote matchup games, and in my head, I'm like, this is not a matchup game. If you do not want to play your best and make it closer than it needs to be, and then afterwards say it's a matchup game, that's one thing. But coming into the games, they don't feel like matchup games. This is a matchup game. These are two teams that recruit at the upper echelon of the sport and have for several years. The whatever metrics you want to use to determine like roster talent composition. These two teams are fairly even and have been, and certainly more so than Ohio State is with any other team in the Big Ten. But that doesn't mean that Ohio State is at a disadvantage like across the board. I think there are places for them to pinpoint that are advantages for them. So it's a talent equated game, as Urban Meyer used to like to say about games that weren't always that case. This is truly one of them. So why do we have to pretend like it's not? Like Ohio State, if you want to say that the way this season transpired, it's like it's weird that Ohio State's here. I agree with that. But that also is like the territory we're entering anyway. But if you want to like stack up the programs and stack up the talent and say like Ohio State doesn't belong here, like that is patently false. They certainly do. They are among the 2 or 3 or 4 most talented teams in college football.
I think that like Ryan Day should have dusted off the old talent equated. Like he consciously, I think, got rid of that and called them matchup games so that these are more competitive games. Penn State is close to, but it's never talent equated. It's not even with Michigan when you look through their roster. To be completely honest about 1 through 85, but Georgia, obviously, that is the situation. That is a talent equated matchup, which I think is why there's been, at least on my end, so much attention on even colds or flus, what's going on with Mayan Williams and Ronnie Hickman being sick earlier in the week. Like Ohio State does need to play their best game. Sure. And we've emphasized them needing to be at their healthiest and how that impacts guys like even ones that didn't miss time, like Cade Stover or Emeka Egbuka, guys that were playing through things, how different they could look by Saturday compared to a month ago. Like, I think that's why the Mayan Williams thing draws so many red flags for people, that when he's missing practice because he barely got to play a month ago against Michigan. We didn't see him in the open period of practice on Wednesday morning. We assume that he was also dealing with that on Tuesday morning because he did not appear at Ohio State's Offensive Media Day as scheduled. I was told directly by several people that it is still just the illness, but taking that out of the equation, and then if you wind up with just Dallin Hayden and Chip Trainum in the backfield definitively, like maybe that would be a check mark that would have to go the other way. I don't think that's ideal, but other than that, it's like, I just go back to they're going to go at each other, and they're 2 sledgehammers. They were the 2 best evaluated teams throughout the course of the season. Why everyone's so much looking forward to watching them play at 8:00 on Saturday night.
It's also true, I think, that Georgia needs to play its best to beat Ohio State. And maybe the problem there is we have probably seen Georgia's best or close to Georgia's best, and we have not seen, in my opinion, Ohio State's best, which we've talked about before. Doesn't mean they can't get there, but if there's some doubt about their ability to get there, I respect that, because I have that too. That's why I picked Georgia to win the game when we did the show earlier in the week with Bobby and Jay-Z. But if you're going to tell me that both these teams are going to show up like full power, ready to play the best game they've played all year, it's a toss-up. I think Ohio State is just as capable of winning that game as Georgia is, and I think it's imperative for both of them that they show up with their best. If one of them doesn't, that's the team that's going to lose.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Like, Georgia's not had probably the same analysis of it, that it has got to this point without ever having played its best. Like its schedule was more difficult, than Ohio State's. We know that that's true. They had to play to their peak potential to beat a handful of those teams, obviously in the SEC, to get to this point. Berm is working on this story about what is Buckeye football, because that came up several times. People were mentioning it in press conferences. Like, what does that mean to them? And then how many times did they do that this season? And I don't want to spoil everything that Berm is working on there for OhioState.Rivals.com, but Tommy Eichenberg said that the number of times that they achieved that this year was 0. So, like, of all the people who've been media-friendly favorites and He's going to have to appear 3 times this week, which I'm sure he absolutely loves. Nobody else on the Ohio State roster had to do so. Like, for him to say that, and especially as a captain and being a man who chooses his words carefully, is pretty telling. It's also like, why has that not happened? I don't know that we'll ever get an answer to that part, but like, they really are only going to have to do it once. Like, in reality, in my mind, like, if Michigan wins that game, like, we know that Ohio State will be motivated for that. And if they take advantage of the opportunities they missed in the first half, like, that team was in position to really run away from Michigan. Now, they didn't do it, but that's also part of the 0 out of 12 reaching their potential. I don't think their absolute best is required to beat Michigan in a rematch. It definitely will be on Saturday night, but like, it would be very unfulfilling and frustrating, I'm sure, for Ohio State fans and all these people that are, outside of the program asking questions about the status of the program. If this team, which seemed to have everything going for it coming into the year and have everything in position to make a special run and win a national championship, if they evaluate it themselves and say that they played 13 times and never played their best football, that would just be hard to really comprehend.
Well, that then invites the fair questions. I think it's why did a program with every resource in the world, with as much talent as anybody, not find a way to ever maximize that? And it's different year to year. Like, I don't know that maybe you do start stacking years on top of years, but I don't know if we've reached that point. Like, even last year's team, like, I know people weren't happy with the way that last season ended. I viewed the ceiling of this team considerably higher than last year's team, just with the experience they had returning. So I don't know. They've come closer to maximizing this year probably than they did last year, but I don't even know if the maximized version of last year's team was quite national championship caliber. I've thought all along that this one was. But we've yet to see that level of play. They have the opportunity to finally get that under the belt on Saturday, and as we've said, they need to. But if that doesn't happen, then I do think you question maybe the direction a little bit. It's not so much like the foundation of the program. Is it crumbling? Does the idea of Ohio State as we know it fundamentally change if they don't win this game, or if they get blown out in this game? I don't know if that's the case, but I do think it would be, high time for hard questions about what is the missing piece here that's causing Ryan Day and this staff to not quite get everything they should be getting out of this team.
Mm-hmm. That's a good view of it. I think if you were here on Thursday, who would be the first person that you wanted to go talk to?
Is Tate Martell going to be there?
He's not here. I believe he retired from football. Now, I mean, we can probably get you in touch with him if you need to talk shop about this matchup. I'm sure he'd have a lot of great insight.
It would. I mean, the backup quarterbacks for sure, Kyle McCord and Devin Brown, and then maybe like CJ Hicks. Maybe, I don't know. I like the young players we know are super talented who just haven't played very much yet, and sort of what their outlook on things is, or sort of the players that I like to try to have a few minutes with on days like that.
Okay. Those are good. Yeah, I think that Kyle McCord and Devin Brown are probably going to draw a pretty big crowd.
Yeah.
I do remember the Tate Martell experience at the Rose Bowl, and he was far and away the number one most coveted interview.
Yeah, that was different times. I think this is backup quarterbacks are always interesting. These guys I think are interesting for different reasons. I did not talk to Tate on that day. I was paid a few shekels by my coworker at the time so that he could go talk to Tate Martell, and I think I spent my afternoon like trying to talk to Alex Grinch, who didn't want anything to do with me. So I missed I missed the Tate Martell show that day, unfortunately.
And it was also great that you could use all that time to talk to Alex Grinch, knowing that he was about 6 days away from leaving for Oklahoma.
Yeah,
good.
It was good.
That didn't really work out well for you.
It was a big waste of time. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tate using his time to trash talk Justin Fields and try and talk him out of transferring to Ohio State was definitely worthy of the big top circus atmosphere that we had for that day. The breakfast burritos were phenomenal.
Oh, I think about that probably once a week. That breakfast food truck they had there, they were incredible.
I think that's the first time I've ever said something nice about the Rose Bowl.
That was a definite highlight. Say, like I'm on board with you mostly about the the Rose Bowl criticisms, but those breakfast burritos were a saving grace.
Yeah, I don't agree with the other narrative this week that's emerged, which is that the Rose Bowl being canceled is the end of humanity. I read that column twice yesterday. The end of the world because the Rose Bowl is no longer going to have January 1 all to itself. One of the most amazing works of art I've ever read in this profession.
I very much enjoy the trivial things that people can really get themselves worked up over. It's just like I couldn't care less about what day the Rose Bowl's played.
Yeah, I think you have a very misguided notion of the value of the Rose Bowl and how miserable the rest of the week is. Bud, come on.
Yeah, well, the sunset's nice, though.
Well, I mean, if UCLA was ever good enough to actually host a playoff game in there, maybe that would be cool. But I doubt that'll happen. Sorry, Chip Kelly. I don't believe in you.
Poor guy.
That was a winding journey to get to the end of the podcast daily for Thursday. I guess that's what happens when we don't have a more definitive structure. But you know what? That's part of the fun. It's all about the journey and not the destination. But we have reached the end. This has been the podcast daily. It has been Thursday. It's for Thursday. We have a lot more coverage coming your way out of Full Team Media Day. Brim and I will have the Roosters report later on as we get more information. Friday morning will be the final press conference of the week. Ryan Day and Kirby Smart will provide some updates, and we're getting close to Saturday night, 8 o'clock, New Year's Eve, Ohio State and Georgia. A lot more coverage coming your way as well at ohiostate.rivals.com. Look for Bill's work there. I'm Austin. We'll see you later.